Let's talk about personal mixers. As a musician, you want to do your very best, and getting a good monitor mix is essential in helping you do so. Your personal mixer is just the tool for being able to hear yourself and the rest of the band at an optimal level with the proper blend and balance of voices and instruments. The Aviom A320 personal mixer has 16 channels. Each instrumentalist or vocalist is assigned to a separate channel ahead of time and then listed on the channel strip that runs the width of the mixer. For example, there might be one channel assigned to drums, one assigned to electric guitar, and one assigned to each individual vocalist. Each of these occupies its own place on an imaginary stage that sits between your ears. Although you'll hear all assigned channels simultaneously, you can only make adjustments to them one at a time. To select a channel for adjustment, push the button directly below the desired instrument or vocalist on the channel strip. That button's green indicator light will come on. You'll notice that the green light next to the label Channel Volume is lit, indicating that turning the central control knob will now result in making volume adjustments to the selected channel. The volume level is shown on the row of red lights directly above the knob. If you turn to the left, the volume decreases and the number of lights lit decreases. Conversely, turning to the right increases the volume and the number of lights lit correspondingly increases. If you want to change the volume for a different channel, simply select that channel and turn the central control knob accordingly. In addition to being able to control the volume of individual channels, you can use the master volume control knob for adjusting the overall level of the audio going to your ears. Now that you know how to select channels and change their individual volume levels, let's take a look at something that turns out to be a rather common mixing problem. Suppose you've reached the maximum volume level for an individual channel, but still feel like that particular channel doesn't stand out enough in the mix. For example, maybe the lead vocalist's level can go no higher, but his voice continues to be lost in with everything else. What do? Unfortunately, turning up the master volume level won't fix things. That simply turns up everything, not just the lead vocalist. What you need to do instead is individually go to each of the channels except for that of the lead vocalist and turn them all down by an equal amount. That effectively makes the lead vocalist louder than the rest without destroying the balance of everything else. Then, if you like, you can go ahead and turn up the master volume. Although this solution would definitely work, it would also be quite tedious and time-consuming. There's good news though. Since this happens to be a common problem, the mixer actually provides you with a handy shortcut. Let's rewind to the place where we were before we made all these volume level changes. Notice where it says Trim All under the two buttons at the upper left. If you push these two buttons simultaneously, it lowers the volume of each and every channel by the same amount. Each time you push the buttons, the volume is decreased a little more. Now you can go back to the lead vocalist's volume and increase it back to the maximum. That will make it stand out like you want. Before moving on to other mixer features, let's temporarily hide the unselected channels. They haven't actually gone anywhere, but by making them invisible for the moment for the purposes of this tutorial, we can get rid of some unnecessary and potentially confusing visual clutter. Now push the button labeled Stereo Placement. Its green light comes on. This indicates that the central control knob will now allow you to adjust the stereo placement for the chosen channel. If audio for the channel is exactly halfway between your left and right ears, the center light will be green. If you turn to the left, you'll hear more of that channel in your left ear and less in your right. Conversely, if you turn to the right, you'll hear more in your right ear and less in your left. In other words, stereo placement is indicated by the location of the light. Now, let's change the stereo placement for some of the other channels, and to continue to keep things uncluttered, we'll show only the selected channel. Now, let's reveal all the channels again and push the button that takes us back to channel volume. There's only one other thing that you can do with the selected channel, and that's mute it. If you push the mute button, the mute indicator will start flashing. The currently selected channel will be removed from the mix until you push the mute button again. Using the mute button is the preferred way of turning off a channel, as opposed to turning its volume all the way down. This is because if you subsequently unmute a channel, its volume will be automatically returned to the level that it was at just before it was muted. All channels are either mono or stereo. A stereo channel has the word stereo on the channel strip. All other channels are mono. The difference between the two is basically that a mono channel consists of a single instrument or voice, whereas a stereo channel is a pre-mixed stereo image of multiple instruments or voices. Having a single channel devoted to drums is a good example of the advantages of a stereo channel. Let's consider the alternative. Multiple microphones are used on the actual drum kit. If we were to provide a separate mixer channel for each of these microphones, it might look something like this. There might be a cymbal channel, a low tom channel, one for kick and rack toms, one for snare, and one for hi-hat. You'd have to do a lot of work to get each one placed exactly where you want it and at just the right volume. Not only that, but it would also eat up a lot of your mixer channels just to manage the drums. But when all the drums are pre-mixed and presented as a single stereo channel, it simplifies matters substantially. Things work exactly the same for the channel volume on a stereo channel as it does for a mono channel. Likewise for channel muting. The difference comes when you push the stereo placement button. Now you'll see two red lights on the display. If you turn the central control knob to the right, the pair of lights moves to the right. Just like it is with a mono channel, you're increasing that channel's overall volume level in the right ear and decreasing it in the left. But why are there two lights instead of just one? It's because there's a stereo spread in the channel itself. In this case, the light on the left represents the left side of the drum kit, and the light on the right represents the right side. You'll actually hear slightly more of the left side of the drums in your left ear, and slightly more of the right side of the drums in your right ear. This distinction becomes even more apparent as you continue turning the knob. The stereo image spreads farther and farther apart until the left side of the drum kit is completely in your left ear, and the right side is completely in your right. So if you're the kind of person who likes the drums spread all the way across your imaginary stage, this is the setting for you. On the other hand, if you prefer that the drums be confined to more or less a single location, use a tighter configuration. If you continue turning the knob to the right, the stereo image collapses again. And after you collapse to the center, going further will move both in tandem to the right. Suppose you decide that you want them back on the other side of the stage like you had them originally. Simply turn the knob all the way back to the left. Let's add all those other musicians to our channel strip again. At the upper left of the mixer surface, there's a button labeled Solo. If you push this, it will mute every channel except for the one that's currently selected. In other words, you're simply soloing the selected channel. Use this if you ever need to work on a particular channel by itself without being distracted by the other channels. Solo mode is indicated by the flashing green light next to the solo button. Notice that the mixer stays in solo mode until you push the solo button again. Up to this point, we've been primarily discussing operations that affect individual mixer channels. Now, let's talk about operations on the mixer as a whole. To the right of the central control knob is a button labeled Master Tone. Pushing it repeatedly cycles through the settings for enhance, treble, and bass as indicated by the green lights associated with these three labels. When enhance is selected, the treble and bass frequencies are enhanced to add clarity to the final audio, especially for those musicians who are using earphones. Turning the knob all the way to the left results in unenhanced audio. Turning the knob all the way to the right results in audio with maximum enhancement. If you push the Master Tone button again so that the treble light is lit, the center knob controls increasing or decreasing the amount of treble in the final audio. If the center light is green, treble is neither added nor removed. Turning to the left reduces treble. Turning to the right increases it. And finally, pushing the master tone button again takes us to bass. This works the same as treble, but with bass frequencies instead. If the center light is green, bass is neither added nor removed. Turning to the left reduces bass. Turning to the right increases it. Now, push the channel volume button again. That will take you back to using the central control knob to adjust individual channels. Let's talk about saving and recalling mixer settings. Suppose you're in the middle of a rehearsal. You and the rest of the band have just finished practicing a particular song. You have your personal mixer set up just the way you want it. It's the perfect mix. But then, you move on to the next song, and it's a completely different style from the one you just left. For example, maybe you're going from an upbeat song with a heavy beat to one that's soft and acoustic. The problem is that if you readjust your mixer for this new song, you're going to mess up all your settings from the previous one. You'd rather not do that, not after you've put all the work into dialing in things just the way you like. Not to worry. This mixer has the ability to save away settings for future recall. There are 8 locations for saving configurations, and they're accessed through the first 8 channel selection buttons. To save a configuration, push and hold the button next to where it says Hold to Save. While you're still holding down the button, push one of the first 8 channel selection buttons. The mixer's entire current configuration will be saved to that memory location. In our case here, you're saving to memory location 1, corresponding to song 1. Lights flash until the save is complete. Now, the band continues with the rehearsal, and you can make adjustments as necessary for the second song. You mute Ralph, then the electric guitar, and the drums, then Ed. You turn down the volume of the 2 remaining vocalists. Then you unmute the acoustic guitar and move it and the vocalists into place. Then, when you're done with the second song, you can save those settings to memory location 2. To recall the settings for song 1, momentarily push the Recall Mix button. The recall indicator light starts flashing. Next, push the channel selector button corresponding to the location where you saved song 1's configuration. You're back to where you were before. And when it's time to go on to the second song, push the Recall Mix button, followed by channel selection button 2. By the way, if you push the Recall Mix button and then decide you really don't want to recall a saved configuration, simply push the Recall Mix button again. The same goes for pushing the button to save a configuration, but then you decide you really don't want to save it. Simply release the button and push it again momentarily. And that pretty much covers everything you need to know about these personal mixers.